to the Caribbean.
Can you agree that the average American is not able to take vacations the way all the Jamaicans or other Caribbean countries can?
The average, it depends. I mean, I can't, as an academic or a scientist, I have to cite I have to cite studies or data. I don't have a data that can speak to it. I'll only speak anecdotally. I'm going to say no. It depends. The US has 360 million people. Jamaica has 1 million people. Um, there are more millionaires and billionaires in the US that makes up the population of Jamaica, and they take vacation whenever they want. So if you're just talking
I'm
about,
sorry. Who did you say take vacation? The Jamaicans or the persons from the US?
no, I said that the comparison would be off first because Jamaica is a very small country with one
No,
point.
but I didn't say Jamaica though. So I said the Caribbean.
Okay, I mean, now the Caribbean is a diverse country. Or in okay, when you guys are going to do a presentation on the Caribbean, and Jamaica is a little bit Jamaica, Trinidad is a little bit different. Trinidad 50/50, the demographics is different. But in terms of vacation, it depends on Jamaica has an informal economy in terms of the majority of the population is either employed by the state or they are involved in the informal sector. The US
Okay,
is
but
this.
that's not why I asked, sir. I was asking on the topic of saying there are persons who live in the United States who can barely afford life.
Yeah,
Furthermore, going to a hotel or going on a flight. There are persons who live in America who has never left from Florida to go to New York. I've never left from New York, California. So sometimes when you make the comparison in terms of class system and stuff like that and economic constraints regarding the Caribbean, it's like I'm thinking you do realize that the Caribbean have persons richer than the average person in America, right? Like, but anyways, that's for a different day. I won't take up anybody's time. There are
no,
persons who need
no,
to
no,
go.
no,
So
no.
yeah.
Chantal, you make a point, and you're we have 360 million people living in this country. And if you understand this class is Caribbean thought. And I'm talking about, and I study Africology, and I talk about black and brown people today. This is Caribbean thought. I'm talking about the current that I've brought, but then I talk about a people, and that there are people, African people, Caribbean people who have traveled outside of the Caribbean looking for a better life in the Caribbean. In other words, their lives haven't necessarily changed. And then I talk about if you were and I said to you, and on the issue of class, the Caribbean is a former colony. But I talk about an internal colonies, the Philadelphias, the Detroits, the Chicago. The demographics of these places resemble the demographics of the Caribbean. Okay, majority of them are black and brown people. And I talk about the Americas and the peoples. Okay, and my second book will speak to the issue that you're talking about. I am a scientist. I speak about things in a data-driven and academic way. The answer that when you ask a question, you have to look at it in a data-driven way. It cannot be in a vacuum. I am not, it's, first of all, you're asking to compare the US. I have tried to compare the US and Jamaica in terms of in terms of social welfare and what that means, social welfare. But I said, Jamaica, you have to look at the world, and the black and brown peoples heavily dominate the Caribbean. Okay. But black and brown people throughout the world, lives were supposed to lack. Black and brown people is not supposed, wherever black and brown, and somebody said that in one of in their papers and laugh and said, sir, what do you mean by wherever black and brown people is, there's poverty, there's lack? Yes, in the Caribbean, or if you come into the internal economies of the US, the internal colonies, wherever there's a predominantly concentration of black and brown people, they are behind. The less black and brown people you have, is the happier those societies are, according to this. Finland is the happiest country, by the way, according to the study. The report came out yesterday. Okay, the GDP is higher in these places. So there is nothing positive to say about the Caribbean as it relates when you want to make a comparison about certain peoples, because if you're making a comparison, the comparison is with another black and brown person somewhere else. But the plan was always in this world to underdevelop the African. So the plan is not to don't see your the American black and brown man as some, no. But the point is, and the people who come, the people who are visiting, who are they? Who do they look? Who do they look like? There is also a racial issue and not just a class. Okay. Umberta, yes.
Good evening, sir and court.
Yes.
Sir, when you mentioned Finland coming out as the happiest nation.
Yes, yes. The study shows. I'm not saying it is a study that came out in terms of the US is 24.
Right.
I don't know where the Caribbean, where is and the Jamaica. I'm gonna check.
When I saw something similar, the standpoint that came from was different from the one in which you looked at it at. It was one that speak to less colonization, as in Finland is mainly Finnish people. I mean, at the same time, it wasn't a matter of mixture. So there's this integration that most of us face that brings about confusion and misplacement, and then might lead to some amount of poverty or violence. They are not exposed to that to the degree that even the Americas, Canada, even in minus the Ukraine and Russia war, before that, Ukraine and Russia was somewhat climbing up the ranks of that level of happy, even though we consider them to be totalitarian states, because we didn't have such integration happening. And then when you speak to the Caribbean, in my mind and the little I know, I would like to think of it that most of the poverty, quote unquote poverty, that exists now is not so much because Jamaica is unable to fend for itself, but because of this integration that has placed us in debt. And so even when it comes to the tourist industry and the employment that exists, or the way in which you may look on those employees, right? It's not so much because our country is not valued appropriately, but again, because of that mixture that has placed us in this place of debt, similar to that of Haiti, right? Maybe not as great because we're still somewhat.
I mean, I know the point you're making, and
Yes.
it's not in Finland. The Scandinavian country, which Finland is is part of Scandinavia, one of the Scandinavian countries, but there's not much racial mixing. Yes, and you are right. There is a monolithic country, racially speaking. So you're right. But and what happened in these other countries is not only is it a monolithic country, but you find, so therefore there's no need to discriminate. And they have done everything in their powers to make it pure. But I understand that there are some of these countries that are trying to get more diversity because they're realizing that their country is in decline. But I guess, when you have the thing is, in the Western world, black and brown people are discriminated against. They are the poorest. So wherever they are. So if black and brown people were living in Finland, then I wonder what it would look like today. And the thing is, but the world has made a concerted effort throughout history to ensure that black and brown people, wherever they are, their lives are. Look what they did with Ethiopia. Fine, they couldn't colonize Ethiopia. They leveled an embargo against them. Same thing with Cuba. Same thing with Venezuela. Look what Walter Rodney wrote, the book Hope. Hope, the final class. Hopefully we can talk about that. How Europe underdeveloped the whole of Africa. The plan was always to underdevelop Africa and to create the conditions that are unfavorable to Africa or to its peoples wherever they are. So, I'm not trying to make the point that, by the way, I'm not trying to make the point that I mean, there aren't Jamaica. I'm not saying that the Caribbean don't have beautiful places and so on and so forth, and America don't have. But of course, I mean, I'm not going to be naive. We're talking about the U.S. is, and I'm from Jamaica originally. I live here now, but I study economics. I study countries. I've been studying this for years. Of course, there are places in the US that are depressed. I write about it. I study it. I do anthropological study about Kensington. I live in Philadelphia. Not all of Philadelphia is bad. Some of my family who are Jamaicans who live in Jersey, they say, Renaldo, you live in Philly. I went, oh my God, how you live in Philadelphia? I'm not going there. And they put their nose up and they think, and then my nephew who got a scholarship to go to St. Jude University down the street, hold up his neck and blah, blah, blah. But I I love Philadelphia. It has beautiful places in Philadelphia. It's a rich and amazing town. It's almost like people think that everywhere in Jamaica is bad. Everywhere in Philadelphia is bad. But no, that's not the case. It is. But what we know that these places are predominantly black. That's why I came to live here. I like the culture. This is my city. Okay. I wanted to go somewhere that identify with me. I don't have to be, I don't have to worry for people to be arresting me and discriminating against me. I want to be black and black. Okay. That's what I want. I live here and I love it here. Okay. I didn't go live to New Jersey. I didn't go to New York. I came to Philadelphia, black city that is historically known for the Underground Railroad that has hidden and protected and supported black people. Okay. And they have a lot of policies and social programs. And if you do social work, you want to come here because there are lots of opportunities and they do a lot of work and they are on the forefront of developing initiatives, public health, all kind of different initiatives and different stuff. Great. Okay. Our people are here. The mayor is black. We have poverty, and there are people who are trying to cut the federal funding and the programs that to help the black and brown communities, because just like the black and brown communities in the Caribbean, the black and brown communities here are dealing with the same thing. So I write about globalization and I write about people because that's what I do. That's my activism. That's my prophetic responsibility. And God has opened up my mind to do that. So yes, you know what I mean? That's what I'm about. And I hope that you guys will, continue to fight for your black and brown peoples who have been discriminated against.
Sir, I really appreciate that, and as a student of yours, I'm just also trying to broaden my horizon. But at the same time, I look at it, even in regards to the federal funding, let's just move into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Studies are cut for whatever aspect. Is it only the black and brown community that is then affected? And I'm looking at it because I know while our voices might be the loudest in the room now, is it that because we refuse to be colonized, we refuse to be suppressed because we have been so before, that rooted desire, anger that we now carry, right? Is that also, can we then say we might be blindfolded by, past history so now we just refuse to just look at maybe what the broader picture can become? Because, sir,
we have to be united, and I think
it is innate.
Go ahead.
It is innate for us to want to be among our kind, right? I would prefer be in a room, racism aside, I would prefer to be in a room with 10 black people. And then to put that niche even further, I'd prefer to be in a room with 10 Jamaicans, right? Because that is my kind. It is culture that we identify with. So I'm not going to at any point be ignorant to the fact that racism is real and it is rooted, but that is human. That is a human response. Your kind is your kind. So, I mean, as I see all these things happening around globally, I would be ignorant to think that, quote unquote, the president now is not favoring his kind over somewhat. But is he favoring his kind or is he favoring his country? And there's a thin line between both. But if we keep saying, okay, it's a black and brown.
And I'm going to tell you this, just so you know, Colin Powell, who is from Jamaica, who is black, they just removed him from the Pentagon walls. They just removed another black general from the
Yeah, but
Pentagon.
why was that? I am more interested in the why than the who, sir. You see, the thing is, listen, this
Yeah,
indoctrination and streamline talking, it doesn't work for me anymore. You know, you see, just like how
yeah,
you say, sir, you study and you read. Gone are
yeah,
the days I was fueled or emotionally driven just by
yeah,
headlines and so on. I'm more interested in the
yeah,
who
yeah.
because all
Yeah, but
racism.
what we are trying to do is there is a move to cut social welfare programs and to shut welfare. We know that there it's going to affect a lot of Americans. We know a lot of schools are affected. Of course, it's going to affect a lot of people, but the most vulnerable people who are affected are black and brown people, the working class.
Yeah.
And so we are working on, we're trying to prevent that. I'm part of a conversation trying to prevent that. Um, um, there is, I had to send a letter last week, and just so you know, I might have said that to you last week. I did send a letter to Senator Street. Um, and so hopefully he respond. I mean, and I got a call yesterday from one of the owners of PAMMJ saying thank you for the letter that I had sent, because they rely heavily on federal funding to provide to help. He's a small business. He's a Caucasian gentleman. He reached out to me. He's Caucasian, but he operates in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and they needed funding. And so they were cutting the funding off, and he met with Senator Street, and I had to write a letter talking about the program that I do and the people who I serve, and saying that these people need the programs, and if they were to take the funding from these businesses, then it means then that the people in my program won't be able to utilize the services that they offer, and that's what's been going on. They're not cutting the people, they're not directly targeting individuals. They're targeting through certain businesses that serve these people. You understand? And that's what happened. That's what's going on. That's part of the problem. Um, but as I said to you, I think everything will be all right. If Americans continue to be strong and continue to shed light and hold people. You have to hold your government accountable. You have to keep them on their back foot. They must never feel easy and feel as though they can do anything. They must always feel the heat of the populace. We must always hold them accountable, or else what happened in Russia and Ukraine, another World War I could happen, another World War II could happen. It's each of us as individuals, as world citizens, have a responsibility to do our research, to study, to understand ulterior motives. As I said to you, some of you who were in the class, I was part of a study in 2009 that says by 2020, 2025, there were fears that America would be, the dominant will become part of the minority will become part of the majority popular, and the majority will be part of the minority. That those are real fears that people have. So there was a lot of money, and there's a lot of efforts to re-establish a plan called Project 2025, which is part of MAGA 2025, coinciding with the research that was done in 2009 by Schulman, Ronkers, and Bill Calculus, Inc., of which I happened to be part of that study when I was in New Jersey at the time, talking to Americans all over, finding out, to white Americans, finding out what their fears were, and also talking with Black Americans, Brown Americans, Indian Americans, Chinese Americans. Majority of the Caucasians were saying, "Oh, our country's going to look like Haiti. Our country's going to look like Africa." Like you, I said, well, they have a responsibility. I mean, the Americans have a responsibility. The U.S. have a responsibility to make the U.S. great. Jamaica and the Caribbean have a responsibility to make it great. My responsibility is to tell you what the history of the Caribbean and the various perspectives that have concerning the currents that have come to shape the Caribbean. But the Caribbean, the creation of the Caribbean has largely been a strategy. And if you go to Georgetown and you get to reach archive, you see archives, colonial archives from mercantilism and all the way up. You see this strategy that has gone in to create the Caribbean, the strategy that's gone to create the IMF, that continue to keep certain people from certain countries down. I said to people, immigration, when you look at the post-industrial country, the immigration towards Black and brown peoples and countries are draconian. towards the Caribbean is draconian, very restrictive. But when you look at the policy towards European countries or countries that are predominantly dominated by white folk, then it is more open and affirming. But that is the reality we live in now. There has always been a concerted effort to keep down a certain people because we live in a world of privilege, power, and position. And the world has, which is known through various terms, we've gone through various epochs, various civilization, colonialism, neoliberalism, neo-capitalism, pseudo-communism, whatever the ism is, we have gone through various, but it's been the same, where men have demonstrated a privilege their position and have utilized various strategies to promote themselves at the expense of others. Race is a strategy. I wish there was no race, but apart from the human race, but the fact of the matter is, it is here. My twin brother and I was in a big debate, and we talked about, well, what if? I said, no, but the factor is, this is what is happening. Race is here. Classism is here. Colonialism did happen, and post-colonialism is here and still happens to this day. Okay, there is no go around it. There are those today. When people go to appraise a black property, it is always lower. When you go to appraise a white property, it's always high. That is always the case. That is the reality of not just the US, but the Caribbean and the world. Globally, countries that are predominantly black and brown are poorer, deal with, and by that I mean it is made, or there is a concerted effort to make it so. Okay. Now, of course, you have countries like, some countries in Africa today now are really trying to reposition Africa. Some countries are Nigeria, and Nigeria, there is a pocket of wealth. Many of these countries have pockets of wealth, and some of these pockets of wealth represent an elite core that have buy into a kind of globalism, where they are friends with the international regime. I don't even talk about racism in a sense now. What I talk about is elitism in the world today. But whatever the case is, that has helped to affect the Caribbean. That has helped to talk. But when I think about Caribbean thought, these are the currents. I'm talking about the reality of what has happened and what the fact is, there has been a move to diversify the Caribbean. And I said to you, okay, there has been a move to diversify the Caribbean. It is a fact. It is what has happened. There has been policies, politicians. That's why you have PNP and JLP fighting. That's why you have it in Trinidad. You have the political group fighting. That's why you have Maurice Bishop assassinated. Okay, because of international racism and classism. Okay. We'll continue with this class next week. Thank you for the comments that you guys are raising. These are good comments. These are conversations that people are always having every day. But thank you guys. Any more comments? Adras, what's going on with Haiti? You guys have an elite. You guys have an elite there in Haiti, you know.
Yes, so things getting worse, so we pray that things might get slow, but things getting very rough right now.
Yes. But it's still nothing is changed in Haiti?
Nothing changed. So it is the whole capital is being controlled by the bandit and them and the gangs. So that basically that's.
I don't know. But they're saying that it's just the capital, but everywhere else is fine. Is that true?
Okay, so there is we can see that there is 12 parish in Haiti. So if we take it like this, so it is the capital itself and Atibonite. So these are the two places that have the most problem, but the other places like in the south where I come from, it just life is going there.
Yeah.
So mainly is the capital.
Oh. Yeah, but if the capital is in disarray, then is there a government? What's going on with the banking? And I mean, I am very sad for
Sir,
him.
I don't
I
know. I have my own understanding on what is happening over there in Haiti.
yeah,
Maybe people will not agree with me, but me personally, from my understanding, is that is the government or the people in Haiti, the bourgeoisie, the oligarchy
yeah,
trying to depopulate the capital because we have a capital who is very overpopulated. But I'm thinking all this thing that is happening is to let the people go back where they come from the countryside, so that they might have something new in the capital. Because when I'm studying what is going on, because we cannot live in a country where there is police, there is task force, there is this, there is this, there is that, and bandit or gang still control half or three-quarter of the capital. And while the palace is there, the government office is there, nothing happened to them. And all the ministers and them walking all over, the bandit never shoot on them. So I'm like, something is wrong. Something is wrong.
yes, yes.
And if you see, the other thing is that the bandit, when they take some places, they put fire and big gun, they put fire on the people's house. And when the police and them come now, they mash up the whole building.
Wow.
So, so that is my understanding of what is going on in Haiti right now. But I just keep it for myself, but that is my study about it.
You are in Haiti right now?
No, I'm in Trinidad.
Okay, okay. Wow,
And,
wow. What's going on in Trinidad? How is it going on? What's going on in Trinidad today?
but Trinidad, they have a state of emergency right now
What?
because a
What's
state of
going on in
emergency.
Trinidad? And by the way, Trinidad they have oil, and they used to be one of they're not one of the
I think
strongest.
the oil company closed right now.
The oil company has closed in Trinidad.
Yes, for a good while. I think it's about 6 or 5 years
So
since
wait, so
that.
Trinidad is not shipping or importing. Sorry, they're not shipping or sorry, they're not exporting oil.
So I don't know exactly what they used to do it, but I know they have Petrotrin, which is the company that dealing with the gas.
Yeah.
This one is closed, and most of the workers that used to work in Petrotrin had to flee to Guyana, where there is a gas thing in Guyana right now, to go and work in the company in Guyana. But for the Trinidad itself company, it closed.
Okay. Now, why is Trinidad under a state of emergency?
Okay, so it's because of the crime, the raise of the crime. They even found the commissioner of police having some affair with some gun entry in Trinidad by the port. They even arrest the commissioner of police, and it's a lot. So
Wow, wow, this is corruption. But Trinidad,
yeah.
actually, there was a lecture I was
Mhm.
supposed to talk about corruption because there's one question what has defined black and brown countries is the high level of corruption. The
Yeah.
high levels of corruption. When you look at the corruption perception index, the CPI, when you
Mhm.
look at all of the top 100 countries or all the countries, majority of the countries on there were formerly colonized countries. Countries of indicate, Grenada is, I think, is not as corrupt. It was way up on the top, not far, close to Finland, I think. Trinidad was around where Jamaica was, actually, the same place. I mean,
Mhm.
wow, this is quite interesting. So the commissioner of police is in
Yes.
bed with the gangs who are responsible for bringing the guns into the country and causing the high levels of crime and violence.
So she was in jail for 2 days, and then she come out. She have the matter goes court, and people still waiting because they say it's pending. It's pending. So people still waiting to hear what will happen. But the reason why they have the state of emergency is because so much killing
Yeah.
and people just die and people just come from this have something that they call block 22, block 7, block 6.
What's called,
And block
wow, back in that sound like Jamaica in the 1980s. But Trinidad was one of the wealthier nations in the Caribbean, doing very well, had oil, very one of the countries that Jamaica that was competitive competing against Jamaica. And then they never had high levels of crime, but suddenly we started hearing crime and violence and crime and crime. And look, it had gotten out of hand. What is going on? What is responsible for this change? What's going on in Trinidad? Why the high levels of crime? Is it that is it poverty? Is it income inequality? What's going on?
So maybe you should look at the migration that has happened over the years. And I made reference earlier to the integration, because you see, where there's integration, where there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of concerns and a lot of issues. And it's something that we try to ignore, but it's something that is staring us right in the face. We're different human beings with different likes and different interests and different way in which we're willing to accept things. And this will always, because my way of doing things is different from your way. And then at the same time, because we're all leaders in our own right, we believe this is the way that it should be. So there's always going to be a clash, and with that come difference of opinion and violence ultimately.
There used to be and then not only that, society is changing. We become, certain values that in terms of loving one another. And then there was always, I remember one day I asked about conflict resolution in the Mennonite church. One day I said, where's the Mennonite church? The Mennonite church used to be the vanguard and the champion. They used to champion a lot of peace talks and peace missions. And they used to have manuals for conflict resolution. In fact, I did a whole training with the Mennonite church for about a whole year. And they were big on, we don't hear anything about that. I don't know if it's because of what people are feeding themselves on these days, what people are exposed to these days, I don't know, the rise in populism. There is high levels of crime and violence. But according to Karl Marx, or relative deprivation theory said where there's high levels of income inequality and poverty, there's high levels of crime and violence. Now, what had been happening over the last 20 years in Trinidad and Tobago? When I studied Trinidad and Tobago in the 1960s and 70s, crime and violence weren't as high, and poverty, income inequality was not as bad. Now, if you look at poverty now and look at income inequality in Trinidad, it is very bad. The oil company shut down a lot. There were a lot of workers in the oil industry. Hundreds of them lost their job. Where are they? Some of them could leave, but where are they? Where did the others go?
But
in Philadelphia, there's a community called Kensington. Okay, many of them from Puerto Rico. Many of them are suffering because of deindustrialization. Deindustrialization left a lot of people out of work, turning that entire community into a drug-infested, opioid-driven community in Philadelphia, in a first world country. When I came here, I almost collapsed. I said, this is not even Jamaica. This is worse than Jamaica when I was in Kensington. But where are those people, most of those people from? From the global south. That's what I'm talking about. They are from the global south. Okay? They're from the global south. They're from the Caribbean, some of them from the Caribbean, but some of them are Caucasian, Irish people too, that's there. But maybe the industrialization, the change in the industry, the economics can affect the socioeconomic of people to the point where that's what's going on. And can I tell you, Trinidad right now, the poverty has risen over the years. Income inequality, Trinidad and Tobago never had the income inequality and poverty levels that it had today. I'm telling you that. And the same thing. So if you were, and by the way, thank you, Idris. I need to come up into Trinidad and do a study. Like, I need to do a study like this one. I will be in Trinidad. I will start to study Trinidad. I will do a study of Trinidad. looking at what is going on in Trinidad, something is going on with Trinidad today, and we are going to study it. But go ahead,
But
Edith.
I want to just put this point out there.
Yes, yes.
I think, as Umberta just said, migration. But I think there is my biggest problem is that when you look at the person that is bandit, is not that people who have like 40 years, 30 years, is mainly young people from 15 to 25. So they are the one who are bandits. So we asking ourselves, what is it like, for example, last night,
Yeah.
before I came to class, and then right by my house here, and then there is a shooting, 2 young boys died. The whole block, I have to reach class late because the whole place block. I cannot reach home. But when you look at that, the 2 little young boys is around 19, 20. So that should be children who are at school. But I am just asking myself if it is not a parental issue where children who should be at home being on the street doing things that they should not do. Because when we're talking about 70 years old, it's just a child that should be at home steady or doing something, but end up on the road getting shoot or get die for just nothing but while you could be at home. And when we're looking for parents, nobody can find the parents, and they are in the community right here.
It is happening in almost all global South communities and in immigrant communities here in the global North, and in predominantly Black and brown communities. It's the idea of the internal colonies. Internal colonies, according to Kenneth B. Clark, dark ghetto is not only in the Caribbean. The Caribbean as a whole is a colony, is a post-colonial, but their subjects are also here in the north, in the north metropolises. The realities are almost the same when you study these communities. So we need to look at, when you look at the dynamics of these communities and the policies and how they exist, it speaks volume. And that is what we study. By the way, Umberto, you have anything you want to say before I before I wrap up this discussion? This is good. The end of this discussion is I would make it I'm going to make it available as.
not necessarily, sir. It's just that in listening to what Edris says, it makes perfect sense, right?
Yes.
For example, I teach primary, and I'm surrounded by teachers that teach high school, to say the least.
Yes.
Now, what I realize, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just touched on a very important point. Most of the crime that's happening is happening within teenagers or early 20s. And let's dial it back to the teenagers. When they do get themselves in this sort of trouble and you're seeking for parents, I know of households now where they don't see their parents, not because they're not there, but again, they migrated from other countries. And in order to survive, especially if you come over here single as a single dad or a single mom, in order to survive in another man's country, so to speak, with children, you then have to work 2 jobs, right? Just so you can stay afloat. And that is the reality here as well, right? So you have children who the parents check on them at midnight, but the parents is leaving at 4 a.m. They don't get up until 6. So they don't see them when they're coming to school. They don't see them when they get home, right?
Yes.
The reality here is also you have children, because there is, you said you want to look at Trinidad, no, but I'm telling you, you should look at TCA as well, because
Which one?
Turks and Caicos. The labor law is beautiful in the sense that you can go work just like the US. You can go work at any age, really, once someone is willing to employ you. But what I find is the children here, mainly from, just for the purposes from Idris' home country, at this point, you find that they leave school and then they go straight to work. Right, and I mean they're working full shifts, so just in order to support or to shelter.
You're in Turks and Caicos, right?
Yes, sir. So again,
wow.
when you look at it, you have to look at these things.
Yes.
from a very broad perspective. So the TCI is not as big as Trinidad. So I
Wait,
may
did
be
you, the last time you told me so? Yes, it was you I was talking to 2 weeks ago. Was it not,
maybe
Amber? And I completely forgot what you had said, and I was supposed to talk about it, and then something happened. Oh, Chantel came, she interrupted me, and then
that's
I
fine, sir.
forgot. Remember?
Yes, sir, sure. But now you
It
can take a
was
look at it yourself.
now, and you had alluded to this point. Didn't you allude this? What is going on in Turks and Caicos?
Well, sir, it's hard for me to say what is going on. I will give you the pleasure of just pointing you to the TCI and let you do the
All right.
looker. One of the issue of the newspaper this week, I think you will
Yeah.
find it very interesting should you get the time. I think
Uh-huh.
there's a wealth um, of information there that would fall right up your alley.
I'm gonna
Just
do that.
right. So I'll
Yes,
just
yeah.
weekly to be exact. This week's issue. Now,
But
as
they
I
don't have crime and violence in Turks and
no, not
Caicos.
as much, but the violence that they do have is more so of again stemming from the migration because sir, at the end of the day, where there's inequality, as you speak about it, inequality, you speak about where there's poverty or there's a lack of
Yes.
Jamaica who say an angry man is a hungry man is an angry man, right?
That's the point I wanted. You okay, you know what? You are driving home a point. Idris is driving home a point. I think I'm getting it. I'm getting what you guys are, where you guys are coming from.
Right,
You
sir.
are saying to me, Umber, you're saying that there is crime and violence in Turks and Caicos, but you find that where you find that level of instability and disruption in those areas where you have high levels of immigrants communities coming in, and then they have high levels of poverty, income inequality, and then eventually there's some kind that you're saying that in those communities there's violence.
Right, sir. And again, because the
Uh,
TCS is small, when I say high level of crime, it's not nothing grand, but it's high for this
but yes,
geographic high, yes, for what we
and
are.
Turks
And I
and
think
Caicos is small. It's a small
tiny.
community. Yeah.
That's why I said, sir, this week issue in the TCI Weekly, I find will answer all the questions you have. I am choosing my words wisely with what I share for more reasons than one. But, sir, as I said, you take a look at it and you would find your research destination, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, what are students' outcomes like? How do the students do in your how are the students do? How do they perform in Turks and Caicos?
Well, sir, I teach private school, so then again, you're talking about a hierarchy issue there, sir. That's totally different. The other teachers that I want to say congregate with, they teach high school, so their realities is a little bit different from mine. But my students, they don't have an option but to succeed, right? It's private school, it's top-notch school, it's collegiate school for the most part. So they have no choice but to succeed. And whether they fail yes or no, you may never know of it because, again, classism. So that's it,
And
sir.
majority of the people there, what are they like? What are the people like there? Do they have the race?
Well, initially, because of course it would be African Americans, but now that has changed because again we are still under the British rule. So you do have a lot of Caucasian here. For example, in my class alone, we have Filipinos, we have Americans, I have 2 Japanese students.
Oh wow.
I have 5 American students. So again, and I have 2 Asian students. So it's but I really only have 3 African American students.
But you said that, but you said that there have been an influx in terms of Haitians coming into the country.
Right, sir. And again, people are territorial, irrespective of what race you are. They are territorial. They're very territorial. In Jamaica, you know too, sir, because you are Jamaican. Think back then when you hear of a boat from anywhere arrive on the dock.
I talked about that too because immigration is an issue. You know, when you are in that country and immigrants come, how do you react? But then your people go to other countries and you are now, and then this, you're in a different, the situation.
Sir, because the Turks and Caicos Islanders here now, they are the minority, and that is what will happen when you have immigrants coming. They will outbreed you.
Oh,
right?
Wow. Now so now I see where you're coming from, Alberto, when you say that maybe that is what, and I've spoken about this because you're saying that The Turks and Caicos people are no longer part of the majority.
Nope.
And
They're
that
real.
is, oh, wow. Wow. And so now that could be a state of emergency.
Well, sir, if you're going to look at it from that point of view. So now everything has changed. So even the years that you need to be here to be a citizen, they have raised that from 10 to 15 years just within the last 2 years to ensure that they can keep somewhat of identity to their citizens. So we have 44,000 people here now. And in the
Wow.
last election, you'd be surprised to know how much out of that could vote. Less
So
than one
you
third.
now, so you understand why. So now you're understanding. Okay, so now you understand, not necessarily agree. You understand the Trump's administration move to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or this not just Trump, but throughout the world, there is this a populism, a wave of populism since the 2016. But you understand this, and you
I
can,
want to say I understand it more than just more than I would like to.
yes,
And as an immigrant here, I understand perfectly where they're coming from. But then again, I believe wholeheartedly if the country produces what it needs, then
yeah,
it can have that option. So here you don't find that they produce what they need, and so everything is imported, including the people.
wow,
And so
everything is
while
important.
America, yes, while America can have that stance where they stand with a broad shoulder and defend their stance to say we are Americans, we are declining any more entry of immigrants. Here, I don't think that they have a similar policy here, you know. That's what I'm saying, sir. While it is that because government has just changed in America and everything is uncomfortable now, this is happening right within the Caribbean more than you know. That's why I'm asking you. Just take a look at
Yes,
the news.
you are right. Look what is going on with Dominica Republic and
Okay,
Haiti.
okay.
Dominica Republic today, they don't want any Haitians. They are doing everything. They do everything in their powers to drive the Haitians out. They don't want Haitians there. Okay.
Classism and racism is very strong there. So because we're
Mm,
brown, you're not, or we're browner than you, then you see it right on the, you know. So, sir, I understand it more than I would like to. And while I hear the cries of Americans now, I feel like I've been living it a little bit longer, in all
yes,
honesty.
yes.
But
So,
that's
so,
what.
That
sir, sorry, as you
Go
make
ahead,
this point,
Idris.
about the Republic, the Dominican Republic, um, so I understand better what she just said, but the Republic Dominican, they have a hate in the heart against Asian because Asian was colonized them or occupied the territory. So
Yeah.
that is this hate that in the heart. So whenever they catch, but can you understand? Okay, let me just explain you this. A child born in Republic Dominican, on Dominican Republic, don't know Haiti even one time in their life, and don't speak the Asian Creole or French, Spanish. 21 years, deported this child because the mother and the father is Asian. Deported the child to come to Haiti. And the child know no French, no Creole, nothing like that. So you ask yourself, is it exactly they're looking after my illegal migrant, or
Yeah.
they have something in their heart against Asian? And it's not one case, it's not two cases, it's not three, it's thousands of cases like this,
Yes.
where the children born over there, they know nothing about Haiti, they being deported to the country. Some of them, the mother die, the father die, they come to Haiti, they don't know what they come to do.
Wow. Wow. This is interesting. We've ended class, but wow, the discussions were very refreshing, and I really appreciate you guys staying on. This has become the Neoliberal podcast. This has become reflect. Because I'm going to publish this, just so you know. I'm going to publish the last section of this as a standalone podcast episode featuring Amberto Coke and Idris Manias. Okay.
Yes, sir.
This was good, but I love to know what's going on in these places like Turks and Caicos. Nobody talks about Turks and Caicos. Nobody talks about what's going on in Haiti enough. We can't talk about that enough. Nobody talks about what's going on. And the idea, what you are talking about, Umberta, it's powerful. You should write, and you should write. You should journal your experience, your journeys. What in you make a very powerful point. You should write it in an essay. Your reflections, your observation about what's going on in Turks and Caicos, and how what and even in fact what and even that right now the Turks and Caicos are outnumbered by the immigrants here, and so that now there is a move and there's a drive to pass policies. Turks are passing policies so to make it harder for the immigrant community to who are there so as to preserve their fledgling and dying community. And so now the conversation now becomes broadened. Then is it unfair then to look at what Donald Trump is doing and what countries are doing to promote populism so as to preserve their cultures? This is quite interesting. So this is a profound point. And this is something that you must study. That's a paper you must write. Umberta?
Still here, sir.
Yeah, you're gonna you should write it in one of your on a paper. It's a powerful paper. Write it as an article. Make a note of it and sit down and write. This is powerful. Same thing with Idris. You're in Trinidad. You made some very powerful point about what's going on there. Please, okay, write an article about these reflections. Okay, all right.
Yes, sir.
Sir, have a good evening.
Well, thank you guys. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace both now and forever. And that you will be inspired and that God will inspire you and you will inspire others. That you will find favor wherever you go, and that God will grant you his favor. These are the messages we ask. Amen. See you next week, Friday. All right, Idris.